Hi, crafty friends. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I am super excited to share a fun and eye catching technique using 3D embossing folders and my ink pads. And trust me, if you haven't tried this yet, you're going to want to. So, over the years, I've shared all kinds of ways to use 3D embossing folders, especially with the different inking techniques. But today's video is a little different. This one was kind of an experiment. I wasn't totally sure how it would turn out, but the results blew me away. So, if you've been looking for a fresh take on embossing or just love trying something new with your supplies, I think you're really going to enjoy this. All of my supplies will be linked down below in the video description and over on my blog. You can use any 3D embossing folder that you may already have in your collection. Today, I'm going to be using the brand new Floral Bunches 3D embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp. So the first thing that I'm going to do is emboss it using Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And I'm going to use my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cut machine to do this. I have the platform, the shim, a piece of heavyweight cardstock, the metal shim, and then my cardstock inside of my embossing folder. Now, this technique is very similar to the blackout technique in which I flipped my cardstock over so the flowers are embossed into the cardstock. One of the differences with this technique is I am using Trio 6. So, this is from Simon Says Stamp, and it has three different pink shades in this collection, and that's all I'm going to use for the most part of the blending. I'm starting out with the lightest color, which is bubblegum, and a small blending brush, and I'm going to really press down with my bristles and get into that embossed area. So these flowers are pushed into the cardstock. Then I'm going to come in with the second color in this trio, and this one is called Sweets. Again, you're going to really want to get into that embossed area, and it is going to look like a total disaster. I honestly was not sure if this was really going to work. I've done the blackout technique and other variations before, but using kind of a monochromatic look to this was something a little different. Now I'm taking the darkest color out of that trio. This is taffy, and I'm dragging it across the cardstock. So it is catching the raised area, which is going to actually be the background to the flowers. This gave the most amazing result. I was really stunned how well this turned out using that monochromatic color scheme. So you have to be a little bit careful because the Simon Says Stamp ink pads are a foam ink pad. So I am trying to be a little careful so I'm not squishing my ink pad onto the cardstock. I need to drag it across the cardstock. So now the end result is going to be those three different shades of pink. And of course, you could do this with any type of color collection, yellows, blues, greens, anything. And I think that just gives us a whole different look to a blackout technique. Now, I did make one minor change to my whole monochromatic look that I had here, and that is using butter ink and a very small blending brush and just going over the center of the flowers very, very lightly and not adding a ton of ink. I knew by adding yellow over some of the pink areas, I was going to get kind of an orange color, but I knew that those colors would work well together. Now I'm going to do some stamping on my background. So I do have a sticky mat in my Misty tool so I could place my cardstock more towards the center. And then I'm going to use the thank you text background. Now I've done stamping over the background with a 2D embossing folder, but never a 3D. So this again was a little bit of a change up. I inked up the background with a white pigment ink, and then I am removing a lot of that pigment ink with a paper towel. And then I'm going to just stamp in certain areas. I'm not pressing real hard all over because I really wasn't sure how it was going to look and I didn't want it to be overpowering. But because it's 3D, this just came out so much better than I could have hoped. And by removing some of that white pigment ink, it's not coming out super harsh in the background. We still see our flowers really coming to the front of the panel. I'm going to set this off on the side for a few minutes to work on my sentiment. And I will be using the banner greetings from Simon Says Stamp. There's two different shapes of banners on this stamp set. There is also a coordinating die, which I will be using. And there's also a coordinating stencil. So if you wanted to color in your banner, you could do that as well. I'm stamping thank you into my banner since I did use a thank you text background. That way, those two match, but there are lots of great sentiments on this set. Then I'll use the coordinating die to die cut that out. And I think that banner is going to be a perfect sentiment for the front of this card. Now, I think when I grabbed my cardstock, my embossed panel, I may have grabbed one of my practice runs because there's a little bit of a halo at the top flower, and I didn't want that to really show on my card. So I am going to trim my panel down. I ended up trimming this to 5 by 3 3/4. You probably didn't even notice the halo, but I knew it was there. I must have run my cardstock back and forth in my die cut machine, and the cardstock must have shifted a little bit. Now, because the back of the panel is quite uneven, I am going to attach this to another piece of cardstock using a double-sided adhesive. I trimmed it to be just a smidge smaller than my actual panel, and then I'm really going to burnish that into the back. I'll then remove that release paper, add that to that other piece of cardstock I have trimmed to the 3 3/4 by 5 inches. These are extra steps that I like to do to just kind of give that more stability behind my panel. So you could definitely just jump right to adding foam tape if you wanted to add dimension. And I am using some thick foam tape from Alta New that I'll add to the back of that and then attach that to an A2 size front panel. For the sentiment, I die cut out the banner 2 more times using white cardstock. I'm adding liquid glue to the top, and then I can just pick up my stamped sentiment and kind of quickly tack those together. And then I can kind of pinch and squeeze and make sure that they're lined up perfectly. I have an A2 size side folding card base made from heavyweight white cardstock that I added tape runner to, and then attaching my front panel to that card base. I'll then take my liquid glue, add it to the back of my banner, and I can attach this to the front of my card. I wanted to add a little bit of shine to the front of the project, so I am going to be using the Star Shine embellishments from Simon Says Stamp, just using my pick and place tool and my liquid glue. And that's it for today's card using this fun twist on 3D embossing folders. Now, I hope it inspired you to take a look at your embossing folders in a new way. Sometimes those little experiments lead to the most beautiful results. If you enjoyed this technique, be sure to give the video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I've got lots more creative ideas coming your way. Let me know in the comments if you've tried something similar to this or if you plan to give this technique a try. I'd love to know what you think.